Welcome to Looking at Legal Stuff. Today we have an evidentiary hearing in the divorce of a toxic couple where Mom claims she left the home due to Dad's emotional and physical abuse, name-calling, and controlling behaviors, including watching her every move on security cameras he installed inside their home. She says his treatment of her made her mental illnesses so much worse that she fled with their son to stay in a shelter. Dad says Mom was the one who abused him, and the only reason he had cameras in the house was because he didn't trust her to take care of their son properly. He claims he's always been the child's primary caregiver because Mom was always too lazy or too disinterested to bother. He says she can't keep a job and she doesn't always take her meds. She says he demanded that she call him and stay on the phone with him anytime she left their home, including every break she had at work due to his crazy jealousy. What does Judge Wolf think about this toxic love affair? Let's find out.
We need to go ahead and ask for the rule.
Yes. Rule has been requested. If there are any witnesses other than the parties who are going to testify must go outside of the courtroom and remain outside of the courtroom until they're called to testify. Parties are not to discuss the testimony of any other person until after they have testified. According to what I'm looking at, this is a motion for temporary support and maybe some other matters, but if you'd like to make an opening statement, let me know exactly what we're dealing with in this case.
I think I have a motion
So your motion that was filed in January to adopt a parenting plan.
Yes, sir, it was. I think it was rescheduled because of inclement weather.
You also have a motion for exclusive possession of the residence.
To my knowledge, that's resolved. I think Mr. Anderson is living in the residence. I don't think we have any issue with that.
Mrs. Anderson has filed a motion for temporary support. And I believe that concludes it. So, all right. So this hearing will be for the adoption of a parenting plan. Since it was your motion to adopt a parenting plan, Mr. Odom, you may call your first witness. If you want to make an opening statement, feel free. Right.
Judge, I call my first witness, Bethany Anderson.
Who?
Bethany Anderson.
Bethany Anderson. Ms. Anderson, if you'll come forward. Come around up and face our clerk and raise your right hand.
You solemnly swear or affirm the testimony given this cause to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Yeah, I do.
Ms. Anderson, could you please state your full name?
Bethany Nicole Anderson.
And you're married to Daryl Andrew Anderson, correct?
Yes, sir.
How long have you all been married?
Since March 2nd, 2018.
You having children?
One,
What's your child's name?
Rylan Connor Anderson.
And what was his date of birth? Miss Anderson, you would agree with me that Mr. Anderson filed for divorce on January 4th, 2022, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, Ms. Anderson, can you describe for me your work history?
Several jobs in the past. I'm currently working at Tensco. I've been there since last Tuesday. Just several jobs in the past.
Well, I'm just, if you could be more specific about your work history since the birth of your child.
I babysat for a while and then went back to work.
So during what period of time did you babysit?
Um, um,
Do you not know?
it's been so long, I can't remember.
Well, your child was born in August of 2017. So
Sir.
it's less than 5 years ago, correct?
Yes, sir.
But you can't tell me, other than babysitting for some unspecified period of time, you can't tell me where else you've been employed?
Speedway, Good Wings. The hospital. Several factories.
Well, which factories?
Onward. Downtown. Conagra.
Is that it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you're positive that's the only places you've ever worked?
That's all
Since-
that I can remember.
That's all you can remember, okay. Did you ever work at Walmart?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you didn't testify that you worked at Walmart a moment ago, did you?
No, sir.
All right, what about Hollingsworth Oil Company?
I don't know that name.
Okay. May I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
I'm going to show you a document. 72, issued to you in year 2020. Does that reflect employment by Hollingsworth Oil Company by you during the year of 2020?
Yes, sir. It's just the name does not appear familiar.
What was your reason for leaving these employers?
I know of one why I left.
So you, which one was that?
Several of them, a lot of them I couldn't do because of my hand and eye coordination. I know one that I worked at, which was Speedway. I don't remember what year. He came up to my work and he started trying to get my attention, trying to get someone to come get me to bring me outside. And basically it boiled down to he wanted me to quit because I was talking trash about him.
Okay. Has your employment at some of these places been terminated? You've been fired?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you've been fired for cause from these employers that I've just gone through with you. Is that correct?
Not all of them, but yes, sir.
Okay. Which ones were you fired from?
I couldn't tell you. I can't remember.
Can you tell me why you were fired?
Absence, calling out.
You didn't want to go to work.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, Ms. Anderson, would you agree with me that Mr. Anderson is a good father to Rylan?
About half the time.
Well, can you expand on that or explain your answer more thoroughly so we can understand what you're saying?
Popping his leg with the floss water and leaving red marks. When he was a baby, he set up a light in his room and it fell on his face when I told him not to sit it there. He would call me names, and Rylan picked up on that and started calling me names. And he would think it was funny.
You'd agree with me that Mr. Anderson has been sort of the primary caregiver for Rylan, though, would you not?
Yes,
He's the one that primarily has provided meals for Rylan,
yes,
and he's the one that gives Rylan a bath, makes sure he's clean, well cared for, generally, correct?
most of the time,
Okay.
because I helped.
Okay, but you would agree with me that he was the primary one taking
Yes.
care of those responsibilities,
Yes,
correct? Ms. Anderson, can you describe for me, I'll strike that. Ms. Anderson, are you currently being treated for any type of mental illness?
Yes, sir.
Okay, can you please tell me what those, what you've been diagnosed with respect to mental illness?
Bipolar and bipolar depression and severe anxiety. And I am on medication for that. And I take it daily. And I'm up to date on my appointments.
Okay, who's your caregiver?
Centerstone,
Okay, is there a specific provider at Centerstone?
Miss Superwood.
Superwood?
Yeah.
And what medications are you currently taking? You have a valid driver's license?
Yes, sir.
You have any pending criminal charges?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, prior to you moving out of the marital residence, you and Mr. Anderson lived North Mount Sinai Road.
Yes,
Is that
sir.
right?
Yes, sir.
And that's here in Dixon.
Yes, sir.
Now, so you voluntarily moved out of the house, correct?
Yes, sir.
And since that time, where have you been living?
With my parents in Waverly.
And who are your parents?
Reba Gray and Riley Gray.
I'm sorry, Reba Gray.
Yes. AY
Uh-huh.
and Riley Gray.
And Riley Gray. Now, where do they live?
In Waverly.
What street address?
Beach Creek Road.
You know the street number? Okay. Now, how often are you staying there?
It's become my home, but it's not permanent.
Well, my question though is, since you moved out in early January from the marital residence, how often have you been staying at your parents' house?
All the time.
So you've spent every night there.
From the time I moved out until sometime shortly after, I didn't stay there long, but it was a shelter. And then I moved out and I've stayed with my parents ever since.
So you were living in a shelter for some period of time?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and where was Rylan while you were in the shelter?
with my mom.
Okay. Are you staying? So how long were you in a shelter?
Maybe a week, 2 weeks max.
And since that 2-week period, you've been at your parents' house every night, spending the night,
Yes, sir.
okay? And what are you doing during the day?
I sleep during the day and I work at night.
Okay, so you're sleeping all day at your
No.
parents' house and then going to work at night,
Yes, sir.
but you've had very stable employment during this period of time. You testified.
Not the entire time, since last Tuesday.
Since last Tuesday, you've had
Yes,
stable
sir.
employment.
Yes, sir.
Between mid-January and last Tuesday, were you employed?
Agrana. And Agrana. Nashville Wire. One more, I swear. I remember the third one.
Collectively, during that period of time, how much have you worked?
I would say maybe 2 months at max. I guess
If you
two,
weren't
2.5.
working, if you weren't working, you're still staying at your parents'.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and are you sleeping during the day?
Yes, sir.
Okay, when you're not working, and then what are you doing at night?
I go to work during the week, and then on the weekends I spend all day with Rylan, and while I'm awake, after I wake up for work during the week, I spend time with Rylan.
Well, since January, you haven't really been the primary caregiver for Rylan, then have you?
Yes, sir.
You have been?
Yes, sir.
Your mother hasn't really been the primary caregiver for Rylan since
No,
early
sir.
January? You've got this unstable employment you've discussed. How many times have you been fired since January?
Maybe 2 or 3.
I recall filing a order of protection in Dixon County General Sessions Court against Mr. Anderson.
Yes, sir.
Okay, what was the basis of that?
Domestic violence.
Well, please be more specific.
Physical abuse, mental abuse, emotional abuse, name calling. Name calling, the last thing before I left, he shoved me and I almost hit the floor from him shoving me. And that was my last straw.
Well, Ms. Anderson, I'm asking you to be more specific about how he physically abused you. You said that he shoved you and almost made you fall to the floor on one occasion. I'm asking you, what else are you alleging that Mr. Anderson did to physically abuse you?
When Rylan was about 2 or 3, we got into a heated argument, and before it escalated, we were in the living room, and he had taken both of our phones, put it in his safe that I do not know the code to. And when I noticed it was starting to escalate, I slipped my shoes on in the living room, and I had Rylan on my hip. We went in the bedroom, continued arguing and fighting, and that is where it extremely escalated, and he shoved me. I was on his side of the bed, and he shoved me back against his bedside table, and the box fan was on top of it. When I went back, I held tight onto Rylan. He was on my left hip, and when I went back, the table leaned up against the wall, and the box fan fell off the table.
So this
And-
incident that you're describing happened what year? You said several years ago.
Last year, around the beginning of last year.
I thought a moment ago you testified it had been several years ago.
I believe she said the child's age.
The child was born in 2017. So any other instances of domestic assault other than what you testified to so far?
There were several occasions before and during our marriage that he would forcibly take my phone out of my hands. There was one time, this probably doesn't matter, but there was one time before we were married, before Rylan came along, we were living at East Forest Park Apartments, and we were arguing pretty bad. And the bathroom and then our bedroom, he shoved me with his his forearm up against my collarbone against the door frame, the corner of that door frame.
Have you ever assaulted Mr. Anderson?
Attempted to, yes, sir.
No, you've assaulted him. You've assaulted Mr. Anderson, haven't you? I mean, you physically attacked him before.
Do you mind giving me details?
It's a simple question, Ms. Anderson. Have you physically attacked and assaulted Mr. Anderson or not?
Yes, sir.
And it's happened numerous occasions, hasn't it?
Yes, sir.
In some of those occasions, Ryland has been present.
Yes, sir.
So you've attacked your husband who's taking care of Ryland in Ryland's presence, physically.
Yes, sir. And also
Okay.
has he.
Judge, can I have just a moment?
You may.
Ms. Anderson, when you are with your child, you're more attentive to your smartphone than you are your own child, aren't you?
Yes, sir, I was. But
So
not
you-
now,
Well, when did that stop?
when I left Mr.
So
Anderson.
up until you left Mr. Anderson, your smartphone got more attention than your child, didn't
Not the entire time, no, sir.
it? It happened frequently, didn't it?
Yes, sir.
That's all I have.
When you have any questions you want to ask?
Miss Anderson, you were asked a lot about your work history.
Yes, ma'am.
Were many of these factory jobs through a temp agency?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Were all of these that you described through a temporary agency?
Not all of them, but most of them, yes, ma'am.
All right. And then you say you can't keep up or physically do the factory work. What do you mean?
My hand and eye coordination. My mom took me when I was little. I don't even remember this, but my mom took me when I was little to a doctor, and they told me I would never get better.
Foundation.
It's up-
Just hold on for a
Yes,
moment.
sir.
I'm gonna check foundation. She said she didn't remember it. Number one. Number two, it's going to be hearsay.
One, the objection is to hearsay stating that she's going to simply be repeating what someone told her. I think she can testify about her own limitations and what issues she has, but she cannot repeat what someone's told her.
All right. Just tell
Sustain
me
the
what
objection.
you have experienced in life. Are you a coordinated person?
No, no, ma'am.
Okay. Do you have difficulty doing assembly line work?
Yes, ma'am.
And what is your level of education?
High school diploma.
And did you have any special classes in high school?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, what types of courses?
I think it was special ed. And then I think that's it. But I graduated with a normal diploma.
All right, and since high school, it sounds like you've had jobs that are, you're not, you haven't worked in an office.
No, ma'am.
And Good Wings is that a restaurant?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm
Okay,
familiar with Good Wings.
hence it's a restaurant. You worked at the hospital. What'd you do at the hospital?
The first time I worked there, I was in housekeeping for the hotel rooms. And then the second time, probably 2 years, I guess, later, I worked in dietary.
Does that mean taking people their meals?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, and then are you better at that kind of job than you are like working like on a fast-paced assembly line?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Since you were a child, have you had difficulty with basically hand-eye coordination and
Yes,
other
ma'am.
fine and gross motor skills?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, this baby sitting job you had, was that while Rylan was an infant?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I
So
believe
would-
so.
Pardon?
I believe so.
All right. When you were babysitting, would you also have Rylan with you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so where was Mr. Anderson?
He was at work.
So when Mr. Anderson was at work and you have Rylan, are you doing everything for Rylan that you need to do for Rylan?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So when you say that he did a lot of the feeding and bathing, was that what you did in the household? For instance, give us a for instance, when you would get home from work, Mr. Anderson was home from work, who would do what in the evenings when y'all were together?
Most of the time he would bathe him. And it was around half and half feeding him.
What would you be doing? Would you be cooking dinner?
He would cook and I would wash dishes.
Okay. And so then while he was bathing him, were you doing other household chores?
No.
Okay. Is that something y'all fought about?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did he want to do all of the bathing of the child?
For a long time, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did he give you a reason why he wanted to be the one primarily bathing the child?
No, ma'am.
All right. And so did y'all also have like the outside of the house you had to take care of?
Yes, ma'am.
Did y'all both participate in that work or chores?
He would mow outside the house.
Okay. And then what other chores did you do in the home?
Maybe sweep here and there, dishes,
Laundry?
help him cook,
Okay.
laundry here and there.
Just one second.
I apologize. Thank you.
So would you say it was an even split of household duties between the two of y'all?
So.
Okay. All right. And did you work off and on throughout the marriage?
Yes, ma'am.
Did he want you to stop working at Speedway?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Are there any other jobs he wanted you to stop working at?
No, ma'am.
When you were at work, did Mr. Anderson insist that you contact him throughout the day?
Yes, ma'am.
Tell the court about that.
So there were times where I would try to talk to my mom over the phone.
Now, let's just first talk about work. Did you have breaks at work?
Yes, ma'am.
And what would you have to do on your breaks?
I would have to call him every break and every lunch,
And was
every
that
day.
every day? Okay. If you wanted to go visit your mother, would he let you go visit your mother?
No, ma'am.
When you did go somewhere else, what did Mr. Anderson insist that you do if you were by yourself?
If I had to be on the phone with him.
So tell the court, if you were going to the grocery store, how would that work?
If I was going to the grocery store, as soon as I was pulling out of our house driveway, I would have to be on the phone with him. I would call him until I got to the grocery store. And whenever I would leave the grocery store, I would call him until I got home.
And what about if you were going to visit your sister?
Pretty much same thing,
Or your mother?
same thing.
Okay. And when you would talk on the phone, to your family members or friends, would he insist on being on the phone with you?
Yes, ma'am.
So he listened in on all your conversations.
Yes, ma'am.
And your phone that night that you described where you were pushed into the table and the fan fell,
Yes, ma'am.
did you have access to your phone?
No, ma'am.
After that incident, did you try to escape the house and run to the neighbors?
Yes, ma'am.
Did he come after you?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you return home on that evening?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Now, on these other incidents where you said you admittedly, you've been physical with him too. Has
Yes,
that
ma'am.
always been with provocation?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Do you understand what that means?
Yes, ma'am.
And has he pushed and slapped you before on other occasions other than the couple that you described?
No, ma'am. Not that I remember.
When you said there's a lot of name calling, what types of names are you talking about?
The B word, dumb A, worthless POS, and then worthless POS mother.
Are those in the presence of the child?
Yes, ma'am.
What names has the child also called you?
He's called me a B.
And when that happened, what was Mr. Anderson's reaction?
He thought it was funny.
Has Mr. Anderson told you in the past that you'll never be as smart as he is?
Yes, ma'am.
That you'll never be as good as he is?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And on this time when you were coming in the front door and he pushed you, what did he say to you?
He said, I was standing up and I looked at him and I said, "Don't shove me." And he said, "Well, get your fat A out of the effing way then."
Is that how he talked to you on a consistent basis?
Yes, ma'am.
Was this almost a daily occurrence?
Yes, ma'am.
What was your mental state like when you were in the home and this was going on?
I was suicidal, but I never acted on it.
And when did Mr. Anderson encourage you, knowing that you had these diagnoses, did he encourage you to go to the doctor and get help?
Yes, but in a smart way, like smart aleck way. Like, he would, the times that he would take me to Centerstone and I would go in to talk to a therapist. The times he would take me, I was fixing to get out of the car and he would say, "Okay, don't go in there and talk crap about me. Don't talk trash about me."
Was he worried about what you would present to the outside about your marriage?
Yes,
Outside
ma'am.
world?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Was that important for you to hold up a certain facade
About the marriage?
about the marriage?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. You said that he came up to Speedway upset because he felt like you were talking to your coworkers about him.
Mhm.
And is that the place he encouraged you to quit?
Yes, ma'am.
Would he also come to Speedway and like just sit in the parking lot while you were working?
Yes, ma'am.
How often did that occur?
Every so often.
Would he call you while you were at work, even when you weren't on break?
No, ma'am.
Did he come to the babysitting job that you had?
That was in our home.
Okay, so how did that work?
Whenever he got off work, he would just come home.
Okay. But I'm just saying, when you did the babysitting work, that was in your own home.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you think the Hollinsworth is the company that owned Speedway? Or is that the only market you've ever worked at?
I know Speedway, but I'm trying to figure out.
You don't know who the holding company is?
No.
Okay. Other than Speedway, did you work at any other like gas stations or like Quick Marts?
Sudden Service. And that should be it.
All right. Now, some of these jobs, did you quit because of the hours?
Yes, ma'am. Especially Walmart.
Okay, all right. When you would get home from work, what would Mr. Anderson like think you should do?
He did not want me to stay on my phone. He expected me to get up and do something around the house.
When you came home from work, would he even let you sit down for a few minutes?
No, ma'am.
And so what would he say to you?
Get up, find something to do around the house. Do something.
At the end, were y'all in basically daily arguments?
Yes, ma'am.
You described that Mr. Anderson spanks Rylan with a fly swatter. Does he leave marks when he does that?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that something you tried to address with him?
Yes, ma'am.
And what would he say?
Yeah. It didn't register, I guess.
With him?
Yes.
All right. What other forms of punishment has he used that you think were maybe extraordinary? Does he use timeout?
Yes, ma'am.
And what's the length of time he has Rylan stay in timeout?
Probably half the time, if not more.
No, I'm just saying what length of time, when he puts him in timeout, how long would he put him in timeout for?
2 or 3 hours, maybe an hour.
Okay. And how old is Rylan?
He is 4. He'll be 5 this year.
Do you use timeout?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and how long do you put Rylan in timeout?
Just a few minutes.
Okay. When Mr. Anderson would put him in timeout for, say, an hour, what would Rylan do?
I mean, he would stand there and he would listen. But
Did you think that that was overboard?
yes, ma'am.
Were there any other actions in regards to Mr. Anderson and punishment or discipline with Rylan that you thought were overboard?
Oh, I can't think.
Was there an incident where toys were used to punish?
Yes, ma'am.
Tell the court about that.
There was one incident where Rylan would not pick up his toys or a toy. So he took everything, all of his toys, everything out of his room to do with his toys and put them up in the attic for maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and didn't get them back until the end of that time period.
And how old was that while Rylan was like 3 or 4?
3 or 4, yes, ma'am.
Was Rylan miserable during that time period?
Yes, ma'am. He didn't have anything to do.
Did you think a more appropriate time was maybe a day or two to teach Roland a lesson?
Yes, ma'am.
But 2 to 3 weeks is too long?
Yes, ma'am.
Was that something you could discuss or even negotiate with Mr. Anderson to change his mind about?
No, ma'am.
When you tried talking about things like that, what would Mr. Anderson's attitude be?
He would get mad.
Would he call you names?
Yeah.
Would he
Yes, ma'am.
insult your intelligence?
Yes, ma'am.
With Mr. Anderson, is it my way or no way?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that about everything?
Yes, ma'am.
I ask you to describe what your home environment was like with Mr. Anderson. You used the word chaos. Will you tell the court what you mean by that?
So we fought and argued quite often, pretty much from the get-go, way before we got married. Constantly in turmoil. Mental and verbal abuse, emotional, physical. It's just an all the time, something all the time, basically.
Now, what about the money in the marriage? Were you privy to, did Mr. Anderson have an account?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Would he file taxes for the both of y'all?
Yes, ma'am.
Did he file taxes and keep, like the refunds?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you even know how much your refund was last year or the year before?
Last year, I don't believe so, but the years before, yes, ma'am.
Okay, and so would he have that money directly deposited into just his single account?
Yes, ma'am.
And what would he tell you the reason was that he did that?
I mean,
That's just what he did?
yeah.
You worked, I believe, in 2021, you had two jobs in 2021, it appears from your W-2s. One was Express.
Yes, ma'am.
What was that, Express?
Express Employment in Dixon.
Okay. And you made $8,396.78 there.
Yes, ma'am.
That's a temp agency.
Yes, ma'am.
And then People Ready, is that another agency?
Yes, ma'am. In
All right.
Dixon.
And so in 2021, you made a total of $11,167.69.
Yes, ma'am.
And the temp agency, do they choose which jobs they assign you to?
Yes, ma'am.
And then you just accept them?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Miss Lynn, may I say something?
Is it pertaining to a question I asked you?
Go on and then I'll say it at the end.
Okay.
I'll wait.
The job you have now, is it through a temp agency?
Yes, ma'am.
And so did Mr. Anderson have a problem with you changing jobs during the marriage?
Yes, ma'am.
And what would he say to you?
Keep one job and stick to it.
So you said there were times that you got relieved or terminated or fired because you would call in.
Yes, ma'am.
When you're working for a temp agency, is there usually not the ability to call in?
There is, but they're very strict on that.
During the marriage, did you stay on your medication the entire time?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you struggle with what was going on in your life, in your marriage, and in your diagnosis?
Yes, ma'am.
Have you been, since things aren't chaotic anymore, are you dealing with your bipolar disorder better now?
Yes, ma'am. A lot better.
Okay. What effect did the marriage have on your mental health?
It made me suicidal. I'm not gonna lie. You know, at that point, I didn't want to be here anymore. I never acted on it. I was too scared to act on it. But that's the lowest I've ever been in my entire life.
Has that improved since you moved out?
Yes, ma'am.
When you first left, you went to a shelter,
Yes, ma'am.
and that's when you obtained the order of protection.
Yeah, first day I moved out. Yeah, first day, the same day I moved out is when I got the order of protection, and I went straight to the shelter. Me and Rylan.
Now, you've told me that there are cameras in the house.
Yes, ma'am.
What kind of cameras are we talking about?
Wired cameras.
Wired cameras?
Yes, ma'am.
We're not talking about ring outdoor security cameras.
No, ma'am.
So what rooms are the cameras in?
They are in Rylan's room, the living room, and all outside the house.
What is the purpose of the cameras?
He claimed for if we were to get robbed or someone tried to come in and kill us. I mean,
Is it like a fixed system inside that records?
yes, ma'am. They're the two that are inside are up in a corner in each room.
Now, who had the ability to view these cameras?
Mr. Anderson.
What about you? Could you view the cameras?
I could get on there, but I didn't know the passwords to anything, you know.
Is Mr. Anderson a jealous person?
Yes, ma'am.
Did he make accusations against you during the marriage of infidelity?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, was that a constant thing too?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that the reason he constantly had you checking in?
Yes, ma'am.
If you had something in the house that was important to you, what if Mr. Anderson got mad at you, what would he do?
He would throw it and break it.
Give us an example of what he threw and broke.
My picture frame that I had since I was a little girl, it had my baby picture in it. He threw it and broke it, broke one of the corners off. Also, this past year, he bought me a jewelry box from Walmart for my birthday. And he, not even a few days to a week, maybe later, he threw it and broke one of the legs off of it.
You claim that you didn't have any privacy in the home. What do you mean by that?
No privacy. He would, even in the bathroom, taking a shower, he would check in on me all the time. Basically, wherever I was, he was. That's not all the time, but that was especially in the bathroom.
Did he control the money?
Yes, ma'am.
When you earned your money, what did you do with the money you earned?
Paid my bills.
What were your bills?
Car payment, gas, insurance, babysitter, which was Teresa.
So you paid the babysitter out of your income.
Yes, ma'am.
Why didn't y'all pay that together?
He helped me a few times, but that's it.
Was Mr. Anderson excited when he found out you were pregnant?
No, ma'am.
What was his reaction?
He wanted me to get an abortion without saying the word abortion. He went around the term abortion.
Mr. Mr. Anderson, what were his feelings about you going and visiting your family?
If I wanted to go visit them, he wanted to go with me.
Do you have an iPhone?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know if you were being tracked on your phone by Mr. Anderson?
No, ma'am.
You don't know?
No, ma'am.
Do you know, did Mr. Anderson have a password to your phone? During the marriage?
At times, yes, ma'am. But I will say at times I also did not have his password.
Did Mr. Anderson, what were his work hours most of the time?
It just varied during the day, during the week. Basically, some days he would go in early to get off early, and other days he'd work late, like not 8 or 9 at night, but a little late.
So when he would work late, you would be the caretaker for Ryland?
Yes, ma'am.
On those occasions, would you feed and take care of Ryland by yourself?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and bathe him if you needed it?
No, ma'am.
Okay,
I would wait until he got home.
okay. Was that at his insistence?
No, ma'am.
What was the reason? What's the issue about bathing Ryland?
I just waited until he got home.
All right. Well, you said that he is the primary caregiver. What did you mean by that? But you also shared that y'all shared in
Yes.
taking care of him. Which way is it?
We both fed him. You know, we both played with him. You know, we both clothed him.
You dressed him?
Yes. He would wash his clothes. He would bathe him. I mean, that's about it.
Okay. So the bathing issue is what he primarily did.
Yes, ma'am.
The other duties, everything else, diapering him, things like that, did y'all share in it equally?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And now that you reside with your mom, your hours, you start to work at what time?
3:30 p.m. to 3 a.m.
Okay. So what time does Ryland go to bed?
It varies. I'd say anywhere between 6 to 8.
Okay. And so is Ryland asleep most of the time that you're at work in the evenings or nights?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I leave in the afternoon when he is awake. Yeah, and by the time I get home in the morning, he's asleep, obviously.
All right. And is there sufficient room and adequate like bedrooms at your parents' house for you and Ryland?
There are 4 bedrooms, but one of those 4 bedrooms is a utility room. I mean, I would assume so because he sleeps in his own bed in my parents' room, or he sleeps with me in the bed that I sleep in.
All right. And you stated that you're paying your car payment, your car insurance.
Yes, ma'am.
Has Mr. Anderson given you any money for Ryland since y'all separated?
No, ma'am.
And are you asking this court, whatever they do, is to determine the proper amount of child support?
Yes, ma'am.
And are you working now 4 days a week?
4 days a week, and then they said about every 6 to 8 weeks, it's 2 Fridays that you work 3:30 to 8:30, but probably not even to 8:30, maybe 8.
Okay.
It just depends.
And is that voluntary or? does it-
Sometimes those Fridays are voluntary. Sometimes those Fridays are mandatory.
All right, but you start on Monday at 3:30 and then Thursday at 3:30 is your last report time
Yes, ma'am.
until Monday.
Yes, ma'am.
And so temporarily, what have you and Mr. Anderson been doing with Ryland? What's been the-
Visitation, like
what's
back and
been the-
forth.
Yeah, what's been the plan back and forth?
So last Friday from 6 p.m. to Sunday at 6 p.m. Like
So is it every other weekend?
1 week, 1 weekend, 1 week, 1 weekend.
Okay, so during that week, does Mr. Anderson have what, Tuesday to Thursday?
Yes, ma'am.
6 p.m. to 6 p.m.
Yes, ma'am.
So that's 2 nights.
Yes, ma'am.
And then does he have him every other weekend?
Yes, ma'am.
And is that until Monday morning?
Until Sunday at 6 p.m.
Okay.
Friday at 6 p.m. to Sunday at 6 p.m.
So during the week, does he have him 2 nights or 3 nights?
2 nights and a day.
So has that been working thus far?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that what
Yes.
you would like to keep the current temporary plan at?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, and Rylan will start school, what, next year?
Yes, ma'am.
Kindergarten next year,
Yes, ma'am.
but he could go to pre-K this year.
Yes, ma'am.
Are you worried about the effect of Mr. Anderson's attitude towards you, what impact it has on Rylan?
Yes, ma'am.
Why is that?
Like name calling, whatnot, what he has grown up seeing. I mean, I didn't want that to begin with, and it's just, I don't want him around that.
Well, now that you're not together, you and Mr. Anderson are arguing and fighting in front of Rylan. What are your concerns about? Has Mr. Anderson been supportive of you and encouraged a relationship between Rylan and you?
No, ma'am.
Does he, since you've been, are y'all having any contact other than at the exchanges?
No, ma'am. My mom drops Rylan off with Mr. Anderson and his mom in McEwen at Chapels. I do not go with my mother because of the protection order.
And you still feel like that you need that separation from Mr. Anderson?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that both for physical and mental reasons?
Yes, ma'am.
Since you've been separated, have you stopped having this level of depression and suicidal ideations?
Yes, ma'am. Very much so.
And you're still seeking treatment
Yes, ma'am.
in your current?
Yes, ma'am.
Did Mr. Anderson know about these issues before you all were married?
Yes, ma'am. He knew that I had been going to Centerstone basically all my life, probably anywhere between 7 to 9-ish, anywhere in there.
7 to 9
Yeah,
years? Or?
Yeah, years
How long?
old.
Oh, you've
Yeah.
known Mr. Anderson basically your whole life?
No, like he knew of this
Okay.
before we got together. Like he found out, he knew this before we even got together.
Is that something, your mental conditions, is that something he demeaned you about?
Yes, ma'am.
And what would he say about that?
Just making me feel like I'm beneath him, making me feel like I'm stupid or that I'm not worth anything because of my mental illnesses.
Was Mr. Anderson controlling in the things that you did with Rylan?
Some things, yes, ma'am.
Like, give us a phrase.
If I were to want to take him down to my mom's, for instance, just me and him, or go to the park, just me and him, I couldn't do that. He would not allow me to do that. If we went to the park, we all went together. If I wanted to go down to my mom's, we all went together.
Does Mr. Anderson have an anger issue?
Yes, ma'am.
Has he done anything to deal with that? Your knowledge while you're in the marriage?
No, ma'am.
Did you encourage him that he needed some help?
I did tell him that I wanted to go to marriage counseling. And I tried for so long and he didn't want to. And then once he wanted to, I mean, I was pretty much done,
Other than spanking trialing with the fly swatter and maybe going a little overboard on his punishments, do you think that Mr. Anderson's a good parent?
Somewhat, yes, ma'am.
Do you think he was a good provider? for
Yes,
Riley?
ma'am.
Do you know how much money Mr. Anderson made?
No, ma'am.
Is that something he just didn't share with you?
He had told me, yes, ma'am, but I don't remember. But I do not know if that's accurate or not.
The number he told you?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Anderson secretive about things?
Possibly some things that I might not know about.
Like, were there things he just wouldn't tell you if you asked, or?
Yes, ma'am. Some things like I know I have asked him some things, you know, and he'd say, "Oh, that's none of your business," or "Stay out of it."
Thank you.
Total.
Ms. Anderson, your bipolar disorder, your depression are illnesses that you've suffered for your entire life.
Yes, yes, sir.
And isn't it true that during the course of your marriage, you stopped treatment at Centerstone?
Yes, sir. Probably for
And-
about a year.
Yeah, so you've gone long periods of time without getting any treatment for those conditions, haven't you?
That was the longest I had ever went.
Yes, I'm saying there are periods of time you've
Yes,
not been,
sir.
you have not been consistent with your mental health treatment, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
But that was the only period.
Okay, but there have been other periods that were shorter, but you have not been consistent with your mental health treatment.
Yes, sir.
So it's not fair to say that Mr. Anderson has caused your depression.
He made it more severe. Yes, sir.
Well, you weren't in therapy though, you were not consistent with your treatment plan during that same period of time.
Even when I was on my medication consistently, it was pretty severe. When I
So-
was on my medication consistently, it didn't seem to help because it was so severe.
And as I understand your testimony, you have been suicidal.
Yes, sir.
Have you been suicidal within the past 4 months?
No, sir.
How has your mental health been in the past 4 months?
A lot better.
Or how would you characterize it?
No more suicidal thoughts, you know, yeah, depression here and there, but nowhere near as bad as it was. My anxiety has calmed down. I mean, I feel a lot better than I did.
You may.
Cold.
Those are text messages between you and Donna Legan. Do you agree with me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you wrote in the second from the top text message, "Thank you, Miss Donna. Currently battling demons in my head." Did you write that?
Yes, sir, but I was not suicidal.
That's been within the past 4 months, has it not?
Yes, sir.
You also stated in this same text conversation, "I'm currently fighting to stay alive and not let the thoughts consume me." Did you write that?
Yes, sir, but I've never acted on it and I never will.
But you've had thoughts in the past 4 months about self-harm, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, mark it as exhibit 1.
Your mother's house where you currently live, does Ryland have his own room?
No, sir.
Okay, so he either sleeps in the same bed with you
Yes, sir.
or in a bed that is in the same room with his grandparents.
Yes, sir.
And you were asked about cameras in the house. I think you testified there was a camera in the living room, in Ryland's room, and then there were cameras outside.
Yes, sir.
And it was your testimony that they were for security purposes.
Yes, sir.
Did you have any extramarital affairs during the course of your marriage to Mr. Anderson?
Talking more than friends, yes, sir. Physically, no, sir.
So you've never had a sexual relationship
No,
with
sir.
any other person during the course of your marriage with Mr. Anderson? Is that your testimony today?
Yes, sir.
Isn't it true, Ms. Anderson, that prior to you departing the marital residence, you just wanted to sit around on the couch and play on your phone and leave all the household chores and all the caring for Ryland to Mr. Anderson?
No, sir.
That's not true.
No, sir.
A moment ago, you described the environment in the home when you were residing with Mr. Anderson as chaos. Do you remember that?
Yes, sir.
But you previously admitted that you had provoked and instigated physical altercations with Mr. Anderson.
Yes, sir.
And it's true that you damaged property. You damaged dooring and other parts of that house that you all lived in, correct?
Yes, sir.
You pulled doors off the hinges, haven't you?
No, sir. No, no, sir, but he has.
Approach the witness room. Ms. Anderson, is that a hole in the door?
Yes, sir. I wasn't talking about that.
Okay, but you made the hole, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
Is that asked that be marked exhibit 2? You pulled doors extended and almost off the hinges also, haven't you, during fits of rage? Ms. Anderson, you've gotten violent in that house. You've gotten very angry and very violent in that house with Mr. Anderson, haven't you?
Yes, sir, but so has he.
And you don't do a lot at home. You want to not be proactive in the care of Rylan or the upkeep of the home? Do you?
Yes, sir, I do.
You-
I didn't then. No, sir, I did not then.
When you were living with Mr. Anderson?
No, sir, I did not then.
Okay, so you.
But I do now, and I am doing my very best. I am trying my hardest.
So prior to you leaving the house, then we're back to your previous testimony. Mr. Anderson was the primary caregiver for Rylan. Correct?
Yes, sir.
Did you cause that damage to the door?
Yes, sir.
Ask that be made exhibit 3. You're perfectly capable of working, aren't you?
Yes, sir.
You just don't want to. You're
Yes, sir, I
capable of
do.
taking care of your child?
Yes, sir, I am.
Judge, can I have just a second?
Right.
One more question. You talked about counseling.
Yes, sir.
You and Mr. Anderson have gone to marriage counseling, haven't you?
Yes, sir, but only once.
That's all I have. to know.
Redirect. Re-cross, this is actually.
Yes. You were asked about stopping going to Centerstone. Was that before or after Rylan was born?
After.
And
This was probably last year or the year before, probably last year.
when you were asked about, if I could see exhibit 1, or I don't have the. It was Donna Ligon.
A friend from Walmart that I worked with.
And is this on Facebook?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And did you mean battling demons in my head as like metaphorically, like a comparison?
Metaphorically, like sort of like comparing, but not like technically.
Yeah, there technically are
Yeah.
demons in your head.
Yeah.
You meant you just problem,
Yes,
things
exactly.
you're dealing with.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Okay.
yes, ma'am.
Do you know when this was on your Facebook? Do you know exactly when?
Probably sometime in January, I would guess.
Okay, is this shortly after you left the home?
Yes, ma'am.
And were you still in the shelter?
Possibly. Either that or at my parents'.
But January.
Yes, ma'am. I believe so. Yes, ma'am.
Has it been difficult, even though you had an unhappy marriage, to still face the end of it?
Yes, ma'am.
And this hole in the door incident, what happened to precipitate that? What happened right before that for you?
I honestly couldn't tell you because we fought all the time. I mean, you can't keep up with all the fights.
We talking weekly?
Like that, probably weekly. Or
Did you argue daily?
yes, ma'am.
Did Mr. Anderson also damage the home?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did he do things far worse than that?
I do recall there was one time that he pretty much yanked, he broke the sliding bathroom door off the rack, off the
Tracks?
yes, off the track completely. That is exactly why he had to replace the door. That I punched a hole in the door, in that door. That's the first picture Mr. Oldles showed me.
Did your depression and anxiety affect your ability to perform chores in the home?
Yes, ma'am.
Did Mr. Anderson ridiculing you and ride you help or hurt that further?
Hurt.
Did you stop going to Centerstone because you felt like it wasn't helping?
That, and also probably because, I mean, I felt like the medicines weren't working, but also I know I quit. I also know I quit going because I was aiming to change medical doctors, like for my medicines, but I never got around to that. So
When did Mr. Anderson want you talking to professionals about your problems?
no, ma'am.
What would he say to you?
He would down me, you know, he would like I believe I said earlier that when he would take me to my appointments, he would drive me there. And as I would get out, he would say, don't go in there and be talking trash about me because I know you are, or something along those lines.
Now that you're at your parents' home, are you helping with the house chores?
Yes, ma'am.
And are you doing all that needs to be done for Rylan?
Yes, ma'am.
Your parents are a help, of course, is that
Yes,
right?
ma'am.
Do you take him to the park by yourself?
Me and my mom take all the kids together.
Okay. And
Him and the 3 foster kids, and then my little sister's baby girl.
all right, is he attached to these other children?
One in particular, yes, ma'am. His name is Debbie.
Feel that you and Mr. Anderson made equal mistakes fighting in front of Rylan?
Yes, ma'am.
Have you seen improvement in Rylan's behavior since he's not seen y'all argue and fight all the time?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
Like, yes and no. No, because he acts out a lot, and I feel like all of this, all like separating and all of this is taking a toll on him. Yeah.
Was it also taking a toll
Yes.
before?
Yes, ma'am.
Like the incident you described where you had him and you were pushed into the table and the fan fell. What was Rylan doing?
When I stood up with him on my hip, still on my hip, he immediately started crying. He was scared. He was scared to death.
Is it peaceful in the home you're in now with your parents?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Anderson, Mr. Anderson encouraged you to get back into mental health treatment during the marriage, didn't he? He wanted you to resume your care.
Yes and no.
What do you mean yes and no?
Yes, but also no, because he belittled me for it. He would down me for it. In a sense, like,
But he encouraged you to get back into
yes,
consistent
but
treatment.
when I was consistent with my medication and my treatment, he would down me and belittle me, make me feel like I was stupid, below him.
No further questions.
No.
Well, thank you, ma'am. You may step down.
Yes, sir.
Like our afternoon recess. We'll be quitting at 5 today, by the way, so you're planning. Purposes.
All rise. We'll be in recess.
Come up, please, ma'am, and face our clerk and raise your right hand and be placed under oath.
solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Good afternoon, Ms. Gray. My name is Mark Odell. I represent Mr. Anderson in this case. Can you state your full name
Reba Gray, Jane Gray,
and where do you reside?
Beach Creek Road, Waverly, Tennessee.
And who resides with you?
My daughter Bethany, her son Rylan, my husband Riley Gray, and I have 3 foster children.
Now, when did Miss Bethany Anderson move in with you?
I don't remember the exact date, but the day she came out of the shelter. I remember the date.
Would you agree that was probably very early January?
I'm not going to agree to nothing because I'm not for sure. I think it was somewhere in that area.
Okay. Has Bethany Anderson lived with you consistently since that time?
Sir, she has.
She stayed there every night with you?
One night she stayed with my daughter across the road, and she stayed with a friend one night.
Okay. So other than that, she's
Living in
living
my house.
full-time at your house, and she has not been at places where you did not know her whereabouts.
I can't tell you that. She's a grown woman.
Well, what I'm getting at is she spending any significant amount of time away from your house,
No,
or is
sir.
she staying there every
She's
night?
staying at my house.
Every
Yes,
night?
Yes, sir. I can't say every night because there's a couple nights when she goes to work and I'm not her keeper. I'm her mother.
Okay,
She's a
but
grown woman.
we're talking about a 4-month period at this.
Oh, no, she stays at my house, honey.
Okay, and so other than 2 nights,
2 or 3
possibly,
nights, yeah.
she's been there.
Right.
Okay,
Yes,
and
sir.
she's staying there during the day.
Well, she works.
Well, she hasn't worked consistently.
Consistently, no, sir, she has not
Okay.
worked consistently.
She's had a very inconsistent work history since January and before that also. Would you agree with that?
Well, she's got reasons. She's oxygen deprivated. Her hand-eye coordination is not right. She can't do production work. She's realized that and she's gotten a job now where she can.
Okay, does she have any mental health issues?
She goes to Centerstone on a regular basis. She's got an appointment for May the 5th, and she takes her meds. As
Has she always taken her meds?
far as I know, yes, sir.
So Rylan has been living there in your house since early January.
Other than the visits he gets with his dad, which is 7 days a week, maybe 2 weeks.
Okay. Do you have concerns of your daughter's, Bethany's Anderson's parenting of Rylan?
No, sir.
None at all.
No, sir. She's a happy person, much better now than she was. She does daily chores like she's supposed to, cleans her room. No, I don't. I don't have, she's
Okay.
done much better here lately.
You don't have any concerns that she might leave with Rylan and not return him?
No.
Do you have concerns about Mr. Anderson's parenting of Rylan?
Well, my parenting skills are different than all of theirs, I'm assuming, but sometimes Andrew is a little rough with Rylan. He took his toys away for probably 2 weeks because he didn't pick his toys up, and that upset Rylan. I come in to visit and he didn't have no toys, and he said, Daddy took them all away from me.
So you take issue with Mr. Anderson's parenting of Rylan?
I don't take issues with it. I just don't agree with some of the things he's done.
Judge, may I have just a moment? There's an audio recording of a conversation I'd like to play for the court.
Right?
We get the foundation, what is?
It's a recording of a conversation that took place during an exchange.
That's not fair. I wasn't aware of this recording and I don't think it should be played.
Well, you don't have the right to object to it,
I
ma'am.
know,
The
I
lawyer,
understand.
the lawyer for Mrs. Anderson may object if she seeks to, but under the laws of the state of Tennessee, any person that makes a telephone call, as long as one of the parties consents to the recording, then it is legal to record. That's the very reason that they have informants make calls to drug dealers
Was
and
it-
they
was
can
it
record them without the consent of the other parties.
It was during an exchange of the child in person.
So it's a recording, not of a telephone call, but rather in person, and it is legal and can be played.
So
That's fine. Go ahead.
Miss So you do continue to take issue with the parenting of Mr. Anderson?
I did not say I take issue with it. I said I don't agree with some of the things he does. That is what I said.
Okay, and you're completely fine with your daughter's parenting? You don't have any concerns? You've not expressed any concerns to Mr. Anderson about your daughter's parenting?
My daughter, I'm not saying I haven't expressed any concerns. I don't know what you're talking about, what I said, but I do know that Bethany and Andrew have done things that I do not agree with.
Judge, I'd like to play the tape.
You know the date?
Good, doing good. How are y'all? Hanging in there. Yeah, that wind is rough today. Been a while, but he's like never got him slowed down. Let's get him in the car. He's been a running and a playing and a.
Yeah,
doing everything.
I had to fight with him.
Adrian, why would you come on? He said, "Right. You gonna make me?
Oh, I scratched
Yeah, look
my
right
finger
into his
on the
face.
door.
Did you tell Mimi how you scratched your face?
He's always,
You got your barber.
he got in the briar bush
He's
always on a hike. That, he said, scratch it like he did at the
Oh, let
campfire.
me get your jacket. bud.
He was fighting them boys. He falls all the time. Yeah. Come here, you need you. I love you. I still ain't heard that about court. I called him again today to find out.
Supposed to be on the 31st.
Well, she acted like she wasn't working.
Yeah, according to my attorney, it's on.
Well, that's what they told
31st.
me. What, 2 weeks ago? When we called. And then today they was like, she's like, she wasn't for sure.
Wow.
Um,
Yeah, because I just talked to him yesterday.
Hey, don't run out in that traffic.
I
And,
know
uh, He said it's still for Thursday.
Okay. Well,
And that's something to take, because I know that judge, he was supposed to be hearing that Crystal Daniels case, and then she took a plea deal, so
Yeah.
so I don't know, it's something, yeah, so I don't know if they might have changed it because of that, or,
Surely COVID's not an excuse anymore.
yeah, well, I'm about tired of everybody using that nonsense.
Yeah, me too.
Jeez.
Yeah.
That's not.
Everything is.
And everything is COVID this, COVID that.
Watch the traffic, bud. Well.
Hey, come here and tell me bye. Before
You
you
know,
fall.
we all have Raleigh. Oh, yes, we do. And I got Ben Riley's quote, if it means this boy right here getting him and it's the best thing for him, that's what happens. It's judge's call. Yes, and I love him to say that I want all this clean. Regardless of, you know, because
We're not looking for no trouble.
it's better for Ryland if we
Yeah, now?
all just remain civil and friends, you know, and all, regardless of what happens Thursday. Yeah. Or whatever. And I think because we all love him dearly. started this a few years from that.
Come here,
when he was
come here,
born.
come here,
I let y'all see him. I
Come
talked her
here.
into letting y'all see him, so
come here.
I'm gonna stand by it. If it's the best thing for Riley, for you to have him, that's what's gonna happen.
Come over here.
I love Betsy.
Well, we know as long
And we
as.
will take care of you.
Well, that's what me and Andrew said. We know that you and Riley will take care of him
He is still not slowed down.
with all of your heart. But Riley, can we just pray about it right here, right now? Let's get it off. Come on, Riley. Come on. Hey, Daddy, sing in public. Let your public come pray with you.
Lord Jesus, we pray, Lord, your blessings upon the family, Lord. We pray, Lord, your will be done with Riley. Lord, we pray, Lord, for your protection over it, all the family, Lord. Lord, just help us, Lord, today, Lord. Lead us, guide us, and direct us. And we pray, Lord, that you give the judge wisdom, Lord. It's time to do what needs to be done, Lord. Give us all courage, Lord, to do what you'd have us do. In your sweet holy name, in Jesus Christ. Amen.
No matter what happens.
Thank you.
Well, I love you guys. You guys have been my family, and y'all taking care of me and Rylan, and
And I would just think that, later on, we want to go kayaking. I'd like for you and go with us.
Well, I would love that.
Oh, yeah.
When it finally
Andrew,
gets
I love
warm
it.
enough, we can go.
And me and Riley I have cried. We've done all we know to do. I want us all to be friends.
Yeah, I do too. I don't want it to be drama and tension. I mean, I want everybody to still get along.
We hate drama. I wasn't
Yeah.
raised around.
Me either. Me either.
We weren't raised.
I
I
don't
was.
like it. I was,
I
but I don't like it.
I wasn't raised in drama.
don't know, but I'm cold.
I'm cold.
Yeah, that wind has been blowing.
Not as cold as yesterday. Made my back cold
Andrew, if
yesterday.
that judge says Andrew gets custody, we'll stand beside you.
Yeah,
You don't have to worry about that.
Well, we'll
we're
just
not gonna.
We
see.
appreciate that.
I don't know. From my understanding, it's still supposed to be this Thursday. And like I said, I just talked to my attorney yesterday, and we was kind of getting some stuff together. So I'm sure it's supposed to still be, because he hasn't said anything any different. So.
Well,
Okay.
just
I
know,
know you're cold.
whatever happens, we'll go with it.
Yeah.
We ain't fretting a bit. If you get it, we'll be good. As long as we get to see him.
Because you'll get to see him and tell him what you told me.
Well, we was talking about it actually Tuesday on the way home, and I said, I don't know how it's going to go, but if I get primary custody and I have him more, my thing is that I don't want to take any time away from you and Riley. So if there's like a weekend and y'all want him or anything, you can still call me and say, hey, can we get him this weekend? And I would still want to do that, because I know he likes to come down there, and I don't want anything like that to change.
He said, I don't want them to think that I would ever try to keep them from having a hard time.
We've tried to be good grandparents.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we do try to make him mine a little more now than I did, only because he's there more. He's there and he's got a mind.
And y'all have been good. I told y'all before, you've been good to Andrew through it, and you have been more like a father figure to him. And Andrew told me, you've been more like a father figure to him since he's been with Bethany and his own daddy.
That's honestly
needed my truck or needed me to help him.
That's what broke my heart really the most. That's what I told Mom, is because I'd never really had a dad growing up much, and you I kind of had like a dad.
Yeah, just like that. Yeah. If you call me, I will answer your phone. I guarantee you. If you need me, just holler.
Well, I appreciate it.
He ain't losing us.
No.
And by no means. You don't think that for a second.
Yeah, just like that truck or that trailer I got. If you need it to move or do whatever you need to do, just holler at me.
Lord, these grannies can't handle it. Y'all just standing there just stop.
We wasn't playing. When I said it, I meant it.
Yeah, that's the thing that was hard for me, but I've just been, trying to do a lot of praying about it, and
Oh, that, you can't go wrong with that. But yeah, if you need me, holler, if you need to talk. I might not be able to answer the phone, but I'll call you back, because, I can't talk on the phone and drive at work, they will fire me.
that wouldn't be good.
Yeah, they want to walk. But I'll call you. I'll call you as soon as I get a chance to stop,
Yeah.
But yeah, don't feel like if you need me, that you can't call me.
Yeah, I still got y'all's number and stuff in my phone. I mean, I keep it,
Yeah, if you need me, don't hesitate. I'm not gonna be ugly to you or be snotty, I'm just not a snotty person. I mean, you really have to want to be up to be ugly.
Yeah.
I just can't wait till it's over, so we'll know what's.
Well, it's just a nerve-wracking thing.
Well, and it's confusing for Rylan because I don't know what he does, like when he goes back home with y'all, but he gets confused. Like he don't know sometimes, like, where Beth is, or he don't know, like, well, I was just at my Mimi's and I'm here and I'm back at my Mimi's. Like, it's just,
Yeah, he's like,
He's got it mixed up
He
like I was
dreams at
doing.
night, he'll holler for daddy, or he'll be hollering for mama, and
yeah, he gets confused, and so
Yeah.
like I think if we could get something where it's more stable and
Yeah.
everything, he won't be so confused.
Just like when we got in the car to come, like I said, Andrew had to just wrestle him to get in the car. No, I want to play with the boys. And all, and he said, we gotta go, we're gonna be late meeting Mimi,
Lady,
And he said,
you have to capture it.
yeah, he said, we get in the car and he's buckling him up, and he said, now I'll come back in 2 days. He don't know 2 days, yeah. And Andrew said, yeah, you'll be back in 2 days.
Like you'll be back in a couple of
He
days.
don't.
Yeah, he
He said,
but I know he'll be happy either way, so.
Yes, yes.
We'll do our best to do, we'll do the best we can to make it happen, do things for him.
Yes.
So don't fret. I'm gonna be, I'm just gonna be relieved when it's over.
Yeah, it's definitely been,
It's been a nerve-wracking.
it's definitely been, I was gonna say, it's definitely been a stressful thing, and for everybody really that's involved, so.
Yeah. But
I just don't wanna see one or the other, and I'm saying one or the other, because I don't know what, never know what's going on, Beth said, but, just make sure that they stay in this area. That's my thing.
oh, yeah. Well,
You ain't gotta worry about
we're
me,
either
'cause
going
I
anywhere.
ain't going nowhere.
And I would hope that, and me and Andrew's talked about this too. I said, Reba and Riley would fight for tooth and nail. Tooth and
Don't
nail
worry.
and kicking and dragging. So, if she tried to go off with him. So,
Yeah.
yes.
I don't even like staying on vacation longer than a couple of days, and I'm ready to go back home.
I'm shaking.
Y'all be good.
Well, y'all be safe.
Andrew, did you tell me, Mom?
Yeah, I kissed you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll see you.
Bye.
Y'all be good.
Ms. Gray, you recall that conversation?
Oh, yeah, I recall that conversation, but no way in there did it say anything that I disagree with Becky's way of raising him or Andrew's.
You made a statement in there that you never know what's going on in Bethany's head. What did you mean by that?
Well, you don't. I don't know what goes on Andrew. Apparently, he thinks I'm evil or he wouldn't record me. I don't know what goes on anybody's head.
Well, you have some concerns that Bethany may
No, I
take
do
Rylan away
No, I do not.
to,
None whatsoever.
without letting anyone know?
No, I do not.
You agree?
I'm
she has
concerned
a
that
history?
he'll take him away.
What possible basis would you have to say that?
Because I said it on there, that I'm concerned that they'll take him away. That means either one of them. I love him. I had fought for him because she got pregnant with him when he didn't want him.
You
He wanted
understand,
to abort him.
you understand your daughter has a history of mental illness.
Honey, I adopted that little girl out of state's custody. She was oxygen deprivated, died 3 times. I know all about her. Yes, she does have mental illness, but so does he. He went to Levine for years and don't take his medicine.
And since January, you've been the primary caregiver for Rylan, haven't you?
No, I have not. Beth's there.
So she doesn't sleep during the day?
Well, not when she's not working, she doesn't.
Well, about half the time since January, she's been unemployed.
Well, she don't
testified.
sleep during the day. If she's at work, she's at work and I take care of him. Other than that, she does.
So she's not sleeping all day during the day.
No, she's not.
She's doing chores and things at the
Yes,
house.
she does.
And she's taking care of Rylan.
Yes, she does.
And you haven't been the primary caregiver for.
I'm not the primary caregiver for Rylan. No, sir, I'm not. I do take care of Rylan. Rylan comes to me with everything. He loves me. And Rylan, and Andrew will tell you the same thing.
Why is he coming to you for everything if his mother's there?
Even when Andrew's around, he does.
I'm sorry?
Even when Andrew's around, he comes to me.
Well, Andrew's not around your house.
Not now, but when he was, he would come to me. And Andrew will tell you the same thing. Mimi spoils him a little too much, probably.
During the course of their marriage, based on your knowledge, wasn't Mr. Anderson the primary caregiver for Rob?
No, sir, he was not. Beth was there, she helped.
So was
But in
Beth
marriage, you
taking,
help with your husband with your child.
so was Miss Bethany Anderson doing a lot of the chores at home, taking care of the household, bathing Rylan?
She did bathe Rylan, yes, she did,
Okay,
and she
so-
helped with the house, but she's not, I'm not gonna say in a lie for Bethany, because she doesn't clean house very good.
I'm asking about her being the primary caregiver versus
Well, you asked
Mr.
her about cleaning
Anderson
house,
to-
doing chores.
the Rylan during the course of
She
the
helped with
marriage.
Rylan, yes, sir, she did.
Help with Rylan, but
Yes.
it's
Matter
true
of fact,
that
she stayed at home some of the time when he was working with Rylan by herself.
it's true that Mr. Anderson, though, was the primary caregiver during the marriage of Rylan.
No, sir, it's not true.
Okay, on what basis do you say that that's not true?
Because I've seen Bethany with him, and I would go up there through the week when she was there with him by herself and spend the day with him.
And what did you witness?
Her playing with him. I mean, what a mother should do.
It wasn't you taking care of him
No,
while she was sleeping?
no,
or
sir,
not
it
there?
was not.
That's all the questions I have.
Ms. Gray, who was that praying on the tape?
They asked my husband to pray. We're both Christians. We both go to church. We believe in the Lord.
Okay, but they ever asked your husband to pray before?
No, we were being set up. Plain to see.
Was there a hearing? He kept referring to a hearing. So was this exchange just a day before or two before Mr. Anderson was telling you there was a hearing?
I don't know what he was meaning about that.
Okay, all right. But you knew that there was obviously a custody contest
Yes.
between the mom and the dad, your
Right.
daughter. You knew that that was an issue. Had you ever had, or since, have you ever had an exchange like that one with,
No,
what are they
We was-
normally like?
we give him the Rylan. We may pass the time of day, just say hi or bye, and that's, I've always loved Andrew. He was part of the family. We treat him with respect. We treat everybody with respect. That's just us.
And was his mother also with him?
She's there with everyone just about it.
Okay, so she's almost at every exchange. So it's Mr. Anderson, his mother, and is Riley, your husband, with you at most exchanges?
Most exchanges, yes.
All right. So you said you also have 3 foster children. Do they come and go in the home?
We get different ones, so. I've done this since 1990, so. Yeah,
You've been
come
a
and go.
foster parent?
Yes,
All right, and what's your husband do for a living?
he works at IPL.
What is that?
Kilmore's in Johnsonville. It's a subcontractor for Kilmore's.
All right, and you stay home?
Yes, I do.
And you stated that your daughter, Bethany, is adopted.
Yes,
Was she a foster child?
she was.
And does she have some coordination or eye-hand coordination problems?
And she was born premature. She was a 25-week baby, weighed 1 pound and 15 ounces. So she had oxygen deprivation. We took her to several specialists and they said she'd never be no better, that she would have difficulties the rest of her life with that.
She doing better than you thought she would as a baby?
And the doctors too, yeah. She's done much better than we thought she would.
You were asked about her mental health. Have you observed your daughter any improvement since January with her?
Her attitude, everything is better. She's just a better person. I feel like, you know, her not being fussed at and cussed at and called names and is done her good.
Did you hear
Getting
any
out
of
of that
that?
relationship.
Did you hear any of that yourself?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Okay, and how would you come about hearing some of this?
At their house and at my house.
So what did you hear when you say that she was being fussed at and cussed at? What would you
He
hear?
would call her a lazy ass or a fat ass or,
He do this in front of you?
yeah. It didn't matter who's there.
And would he call her other names, even worse? Would she call you upset on the phone?
Yes. Just about and he would get on to her for calling me. He'd take her phone away from her and lock it in a safe so she couldn't call me or couldn't call the law. I've told her to call the law and she couldn't because she didn't have a phone.
When she would call you or be talking to you, would she be upset? Could you hear Mr. Anderson? And what would he be doing?
Ranting and raving, he'd be hollering in the background for me to come get that lazy bitch of mine out of the house. That if I wasn't up there in a such time, her shit would be out on the lawn. Point blank. I might
And
have a recording of that too.
how often did these like fights occur in the past year before they separated?
At least once a week, if not twice a week.
And your daughter would call you? So did you witness an incident where Mr. Anderson got rough with Bethany at your
In
home?
my house, yes, I have cameras in my house and he was standing on the bar, leaning over the bar and she walked by him and done something, said something to him and tipped his hat up and he got mad and went around to where she was at and kicked her legs out from under her and walked off and left her laying in the floor.
And did that at your home?
Yes, at my home. Sure did.
Was Rylan there?
Yes, he was.
Where was he when it happened?
He was playing.
Did he see it?
I don't think he did. I think he was outside. He's normally outside playing.
Were you stunned?
Well, how would you feel if somebody knocked your daughter down in the floor?
Have you observed him? I mean, would he fight and fuss with Bethany at your home too? You know about the situation with Mr. Anderson not wanting your daughter to talk to you without him monitoring the calls?
Well, yeah, every time she called me, I could hear him in the background. He was on every call just about it. And if I went up there to visit her or take her somewhere, he was on the phone from the time we left her house to the time we got back. While we were traveling,
What about if y'all went shopping? What would
he was
you-
on the phone.
What did you think about this?
Well, it's been a crazy relationship from the get-go. I mean, he didn't want the baby, he wanted to abort it, and she left him to keep the baby, and then here we are. So it's been and I begged her to stay with him because I'm old school. I'm a Christian. I think kids need mom and daddy, and I was wrong. I was wrong.
So did you acquiesce to this being on the phone, knowing he was on the phone every conversation?
I told her I didn't like it, but she had to. If not, what would he do to her?
Did he, when you were there visiting with her, would he stay in the room with y'all?
Most of the time, or he'd go to the bedroom every now and then. I don't know if he's checking the cameras or what he was doing, but he has cameras in the rooms in his house, so he sees everything that goes on.
Do you know about the low points that your daughter experienced during the marriage, like mentally? What did you see this kind of stress do to her?
Just every day crying. She started drinking a little bit. That kind of thing, trying to find something for comfort is what she was doing. She befriended a friend at church and he didn't like that. So they quit going to that church for a while. Just a bad relationship.
Did you, What improvements have you seen in Bethany since January?
Before, she was always in a bad mood, always crying, wouldn't eat, just in a bad mood. And she's much better. She goes to work, she gets up, she comes home, she plays with Rylan. She goes to the park, we went fishing. I mean, she's just in a better mood.
Now, Mr. Old tries to make it sound like that you're the primary caregiver for the child. Is that the case?
No.
Okay. When Miss Anderson, I mean, is not at work, who, if she's not at work, who bathes and feeds Rylan?
If she's not at work, she'll do it sometimes and I'll do it. Most of the time, he'll cry for me to do it, but she does bathing a lot more than I do.
Okay.
But, cause I have a shower and I have this little tub you have to put in there and I have to get down in there to help do it. So she does that a lot more than I do.
Okay. Well, what about feeding him? Does he eat by
He eats
himself?
by himself. I don't have to.
Okay. All right. And I mean, does she help prepare meals?
Yeah, and she helps, she does his laundry, folds his clothes and puts it in the drawer.
You said before she wasn't that good of a housekeeper.
No, she's not a good housekeeper. I'll tell her, to be honest. She don't cook. She's not a very good cook. I've tried to teach her, but she's not caught on to it.
A lot of things you said in the recording were you just trying to, are you just trying to make nice with Mr. Anderson?
I try, yeah, I do. And that's a bad thing, apparently. I always try, I'm trying to be nice to everybody. Me and Riley both try to be good to everybody and do the best we can, but
Were there instances you worried about Mr. Anderson not taking Rylan to the doctor?
yes, I actually paid for a couple of doctor trips, so he would take him.
Was he-
Rylan was definitely sick, but Andrew was sick that couple of weeks before or so, and he went to the doctor and Beth got sick. Rylan got sick and they wasn't taking him to the doctor. So I said, y'all take him, I'll pay for it. So I met him up at the place once and paid half of it and he paid half. Yes, I have paid for doctor's visits for a while. Which is no big deal to me. That's money is no issue if that baby's sick.
Does Rylan seem to have a problem with adjusting when he's at your home?
Oh, no, he loves it at my house. When it's time to leave, he don't want to leave. That's the same thing he said with Andrew, but when, of course, when he's having fun, we just got a pool. And he wants to be at Mimi's.
And your other daughter lives across the street? And one night I guess your two daughters, she spent the night across the street?
Well, not across the street, it's on my land, but it's just down, it's just on another lot.
You think that Bethany is capable of parenting this child?
I do.
Thank you.
No questions.
I listened to that recording and it sounds like to me that everyone was trying to get along as best they could during the exchange. Is that pretty much how y'all operate? You feel like that this child needs both of the parents? And you have described to me that your daughter can take care of this child, but then you've also testified she's not a very good cook, which I understand, but you've also said she's not a real good housekeeper. So what do you think her strengths are as a parent?
I am with Rylan. She does clean the house, but not to my standards. My
Understand.
standards are pretty high.
Well, you've been a parent, you've been a foster parent, now you're a parent.
Yes.
And would you agree with me, and pull that microphone towards you just a little bit. Hey, would you agree with me that playing with a child is not the same thing as providing for the needs of a child?
Oh, no, sir. She can provide needs for him. We're trying to purchase a mobile home right down from us where her and Rylan can be in. And That way they'll be close to us and I can still babysit him while she's at work. Any needs that she may have, then I could help her with it. She can clean house. And she does better now than she than she did at their house. I won't mind clean.
All right. And I appreciate that very much. As a grandmother that loves this grandchild, I want you to be involved in this child's life. But my question to you was, what do you think your daughter's strengths are as a parent?
Loving Rylan.
Loving
Rylan. Her and Rylan are really close. She bathes him, cleans him, washes his clothes, folds his clothes up. No, she don't vacuum and sweep and mop like I do, but everything else she does.
All right. Mr. Odom, do you have any questions?
No, Your Honor.
I have a couple more things.
All right. Warden?
Is she patient with Rylan?
Very much so.
Did you see that same kind of patience from Mr. Anderson?
At times. Yeah.
You were asked what her strengths were, and you would agree that all parents love their children.
Yeah.
Would you say that she has a strong bond with Rylan?
Very.
And does she nurture him?
Yes.
Does she teach him?
I thought you said you had one question.
Well,
Yeah.
No, it's just, I'm used to it. Lawyer said, I
Yes.
have one more question. They asked 10.
we
but that's all right.
lie. We lie.
Go ahead. I'm not cutting you off. I'm just making an observation.
Does she play games and teach him?
Yes.
Yep. Is he smart?
He's a very smart child. He was saying his ABCs before he was 2. We'd sing ABCs in the car and I'd go get him. I'd get him, pick him up at least once or twice a week and take him home with me and then take him back to him so they wouldn't have to pay childcare. And he would say his ABCs before he was 2. Yeah, he's a very smart child.
And does she recognize that?
Yes, very much.
And she encourages him learning.
She does.
Thank you.
We was going to try to put him in pre-K, but
During that exchange on the recording, everybody was promising each other that no matter what happened on Thursday, and I'm assuming that's talking about today, that everybody was going to cooperate to still get along and make sure everything went okay.
it wasn't today. It was the last time we were supposed to have court. But yes, we want to get along for the sake of Rylan. Rylan is the key point here. Us adults are just little puppets in his play, I guess. But Rylan is the one that matters. He's his feelings and his emotions. Children, you have to nurture.
All right, thank you, ma'am. You may step down. So I think that's the 3rd time today we've had somebody's phone go off. All right, Mr. Whittle, you may call your next witness.
Yes, I call Mr. Anderson.
Anderson, come around, raise your right hand.
Mr. Anderson, can you please state your full name?
Daryl Andrew Anderson.
How old are you?
I'm 30.
Are you employed?
Yes, sir.
Who are you employed by?
I'm employed by Cornerstone Cleaning Services.
And you're currently married to Bethany Anderson, correct?
Yes,
And you filed for divorce.
yes,
And you and Miss Anderson have a child together, correct?
yes.
And what's that child's name?
Rylan Connor Anderson.
And what's the child's age?
He's 4.
And when did you and Miss Anderson get married?
We got married March 2nd, 2018.
Now, after the birth of Rylan, can you characterize the parenting of him until the time that Miss Anderson filed for the order of protection?
Yes.
In 2002.
The first month of his life, we were actually separated. And her mom was actually doing all of the caregiving for Rylan for the first month of his life. And she always prouded.
They weren't living together. That's speculation.
Seems to me that that would be irrelevant to this inquiry. Sustain the objection.
Mr. Anderson, what I want you to do is I want you to describe the parenting of Rylan during the course of the marriage. When did you resume living with Miss Anderson?
We started living together in 2018.
Okay, and from 2018 until Miss Anderson left the marital residence, I want you to tell the court about the parenting of Rylan. Your parenting, how you parented him, your responsibilities versus Miss Anderson's.
Okay, I pretty much did everything. I would go to work all day and work a 8-9 hour job. I would come home from work and I would have to cook and clean and do the housework and do the laundry and basically everything around the house. But I also had to feed Rylan, change his diapers when he was a baby, give him his baths, get him ready for bed, put him in bed, just everything.
Okay. Are those things you wanted to do?
Yes.
Okay. And what was Miss Anderson, Bethany Anderson, what was she doing while you were caring for Rylan?
Sometimes she didn't have a job, so she would just been at home. But sometimes whenever she would get home from a job that she had, she would sit on the couch. And after about 10 or 15 minutes or so, I would say, you know, can you get up and help me around the house, or can you help me with Rylan? And she never would. She always wanted to stay on her phone. She was always on Facebook or Etsy or something. She would never help me around the house.
And did she choose the internet and her phone and sleeping over taking care of Rylan?
Yes.
Did you cook for him?
Yes, I was the one that cooked.
And what about his medical needs?
Whenever he was sick, we would both take him to the doctor either together, or sometimes I would take him if I wasn't working, or she might take him if she wasn't working.
Bethany Anderson's violence toward you, can you characterize and describe what that was like?
Yes, so, you know, her mom was right when she said that, you know, the relationship was kind of always rocky. I did know about her mental disabilities. A lot of times we would get into an argument and it would escalate because she would start calling me names and saying things, and then I would start calling her names and saying things, and then it would just escalate to where she would either try to claw my arms or scratch me in some way or hit me.
So she would become physically aggressive toward you all, toward you, if you had an argument.
Yes.
Okay, and was, did you said you were aware that of her mental illnesses, and did you encourage her to resume counseling when she had stopped?
Yes, there was a year, a whole year that she was not on her medication. I don't even really know why she got off of it. I actually think it was because she had lost her TennCare for a while, and she had been on TennCare and she lost it. So she quit going, and I tried to tell her all the time that you needed to, you know, you need to get back on your medication, because her aggression and depression was always worse when she wasn't on her medicine.
When you would observe her parenting of Rylan, did you have specific concerns?
Yes.
What tell the court what those concerns are?
There was a lot of times that when he was a baby, she wouldn't change his diaper. I would come home from work and he would be wearing the same diaper that he had on that morning when I left. She wouldn't feed him during the day. I would come home, question her about if she had fed him. She would tell me yes. I would check the pantry and the fridge, and none of the food had been touched or nothing like that. As he got older, where he could start talking, there would be times I would come home and I would ask him what he had to eat that day, and he would say a bag of chips or, you know, something like that.
What about more recently, as he grew older? Did you have continuing concerns about her parenting?
Yes, it actually gotten to the point that I installed security cameras on the outside of the house because all the rioting and all that craziness that was happening at the time, I was kind of afraid that somebody may come to our house, so I put cameras on the outside. But then when I started coming home and I was noticing that she still wasn't feeding him or whatever, I did put a security camera in the living room and a security camera in his bedroom because I was concerned whether or not she was taking care of him, feeding him, doing the things that she's supposed to have been doing.
Had you observed her being inattentive to him of recent?
Yes.
More recently? as he
There was
got
a
older?
lot of times that she would just be on the couch on her phone, not playing with him, not doing anything. He would come up to her and be begging, her to get off the phone to play with him, and she wouldn't. She would just tell him to go on, and then he would go in his room and sit and play by himself a lot of times.
So you observed her ignoring him.
Yes.
Did you ever witness recently him, Miss Anderson, being verbally abusive or verbally aggressive or loud towards him?
There's been several times that she's yelled. Actually, most recently, it was right around Christmas time, like the week before Christmas, before she had left. She was sitting on the couch and she was messing with her Apple Watch, and he jumped up on the couch to play and he knocked the Apple Watch out of her hand by accident, and she yelled and cussed at him and screamed at him, and he ran off to his room and got up underneath his futon in his room and was crying because it had terrified him.
Okay. Do you recall specifically what she said, or just in general, she was yelling at him? and
She was
scared
just
him?
yelling at him, telling him to get down, telling him to go away because he just knocked the watch out of her hand.
You love Ryland?
Yes, I do.
Have you missed not being able to spend as much time with him over the past 4 months?
I have,
And
especially since I've been the one that's been there and taken care of him and done most of the work. It's had a huge impact on me.
because his entire life, would it be fair to characterize that you were his primary caregiver?
Yes,
Is it fair to say that you're the one that put him in bed every night?
every night.
You're the one that bathed him?
Yes.
Were you the one that got him up in the mornings?
There was a lot of mornings that I would, but I leave for work about 4:30, 5 o'clock. A lot of times she wouldn't have to go to work until a little bit later than me. So there would be mornings that she would get him up, but there would be mornings that I would get him up because she would wait until 10 minutes till time to leave and then get him up and then be yelling and screaming at him because he's not getting dressed when she only gives him 10 minutes to get up and get awake.
Okay. Does Ryland ever get just upset like children get upset sometimes?
Every once in a while.
Okay. Does he come to you for support during those times?
Yes.
Okay. And how do you interact with him in those situations?
We both kind of like the same things, like playing, he likes trucks and stuff, and I like trucks and stuff. So a lot of times, I would just play with him, try to comfort him when he would get upset, especially if he got yelled at or screamed at or whatever. He would come running to me, and then I would try to figure out what the problem was. And then I would just try to comfort him, tell him it's okay.
Do you have concerns for Ryland's safety if he's alone with Bethany Anderson?
Yes, I do.
And tell the court what those concerns are.
My concerns is that she's always had mental issues, and if she's on her medication, sometimes it's under control. When she's not on her medication, it's just an absolute disaster. She goes off, gets suicidal. She's always talks about wanting to kill herself. And then she just leaves him alone and doesn't want to take care of him. She doesn't feed him, doesn't cook him things when he's hungry, doesn't play with him when he wants her to play with him, things like that.
You heard the testimony of Miss Gray that since Bethany has been living with her, that Bethany has cared for Ryland.
Yes.
Is that inconsistent with what you have observed of Bethany Anderson's care of Ryland during the course of your marriage?
Yes, there's been multiple times that I've had to call her mom and, get her mom on the phone and be like, Bethany's not helping me around the house. She's not doing anything. I'm having to do it all by myself. And then her mom would get on the phone with her, and then her mom would tell her, Bethany, you need to get off the phone. You need to get off the couch. You need to do things around the house. And, it would never get done.
What's your annual income?
About 40,000 a year.
Are you the document? Last year, 2021.
Yes, it is. Yes, it does.
Exhibit 4.
40,235.71.
Mr. Anderson, I'm going to show you a parenting plan that you have completed. You're asking the court today to designate you primary residential parent of Ryland. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you're also asking that Ms. Bethany Anderson receive visitation with the child every other weekend, but it be supervised by her mother.
That is correct.
You don't really take issue, or do you? Do you take issue with Bethany's mother?
No, her mom has always been very good to Ryland. I don't have any issue with her mom.
But you feel like, would it be an accurate statement that you're Ryland's dad and you want to be the one who parents him?
That is correct.
And is it also a correct statement that at this point in time, you don't believe that Bethany Anderson, as Ryland's mother, is capable of doing that?
That is also correct.
He's not old enough to be in school or have schoolwork, right?
Not yet.
Do you help him though with educational type things?
Yes, I did. I always helped him with his colors, his numbers, his ABCs, things like that.
You've always tried to teach him things.
Yes.
Okay, what do you all do for fun, you and Ryland?
We'll go outside. He's got a lot of toys. He likes to ride around outside. So, we do that. He's got a rock box he loves to play in. He loves to go to the park. So a lot of times when I'd pick him up, when I'd get off work, we'd go to the park. That's one of his favorite things to do.
When you're not at work, is it fair to say that your time is spent with Ryland?
Yes.
Up until
That is correct. Yes.
January? Is
Yes.
that correct? Is that what you want going forward?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Do you miss Ryland?
I miss him very much.
That's all I have, Your Honor.
Yes, Mr. Anderson, how many hours a week do you work?
Anywhere between 30 to 40 hours.
Okay, and when you have Ryland now during the week, when you're at work, does he go to daycare?
He does, yes, ma'am.
And where does he go to daycare?
He goes to Teresa Hill. She
And-
runs a daycare at her home.
Okay, and that's who y'all used before, correct?
Yes, we've used her for probably about 3 to 4 years.
Okay. And if he were with you full-time, he would be in daycare full-time, wouldn't he?
That is correct.
Okay. And where do you work?
I work for Cornerstone Cleaning Services.
And where do you work? Like where?
Everywhere, Nashville, Franklin, Brentwood, I travel.
So you're away from home, I mean, besides working, you're on the work, sometimes up to 3 hours a day too.
There's days that I work, you know, if I have a light day, if I have a customer cancel or whatever, then I may only work 5 hours that
But
day.
there are days that you work, you're away from home 11 or more hours, right?
And I'm never away that long.
All right, and you get up early in the morning and leave.
I get up about 4:30, yes.
And so you get home then on an ordinary day, what, 3:30, 4 o'clock?
Some days I get home 12:30, 1 o'clock. Some days I get home about 3.
All right. But you'd say at least an average of 40 a week.
Yeah, anywhere between 30 and 40. It varies each week.
You get paid per job or per hour?
I get paid commission, so it's basically by job.
Do you also get tips?
I do sometimes, especially around the holidays.
And that's not included in your W-2, is it?
It's not, because it does not meet the limits that you need to make to file it on your taxes.
Would you say that Miss Anderson worked maybe only about half of the time of the marriage?
Off and on, she would work by half.
Okay, so let's say then if a year is 52 weeks, 26 of those weeks she wasn't working, right?
Mhm.
So you had no problem getting up, going to work every day and leaving her home with Riley?
I did have a problem. That's why I installed the cameras in my house so I could see. It worried me every day that I would leave it there.
So the cameras have sound?
No, they do not. They only have video.
So if she's at home with Rylan, you don't know what's being said, do you?
No.
So you have time during the day to monitor your wife while at home?
No, ma'am, I do not, because I cannot access my cameras via my phone. I can only see them at home on a monitor that is in our bedroom.
Okay, so you would go home and watch what happened during the day?
When I'm very concerned about the welfare of my child, yes, ma'am.
Yeah. And you're aware that he's 4, right?
Yes.
So if you took him out this morning, he had scrambled eggs, bacon, and then at noon, he had a burger, and then at 2, he had an ice cream cone and some, Skittles. When you ask him what he had to eat, he's probably going to tell you ice cream cone and some Skittles, right?
He's a very intelligent boy.
So he's going to relate to you at 4 what he had all day long, his entire menu.
Maybe not everything,
Okay.
but I do have eyes, so I can see what's not in my fridge and what is in my fridge, especially when I'm always the one that bought all the groceries. So I know what's in the house and what leaves the house.
So you have a full accounting of what food is there and what's been going.
Yes.
And you would agree, what about the things that aren't measured that are already in the cabinets, say a box of cereal, do you keep it measured?
Well, sure. I mean, if you just open a box of cereal, you can tell if someone's poured some out of it.
Okay. So you would check those things, right?
Periodically.
Did you and your wife have a joint checking account?
We did not.
Okay. And you've already filed taxes this year, haven't you?
I have, yes,
You
ma'am.
claimed Ryland, didn't you?
I did.
Did you get a refund?
I did.
How much?
It was about $2,200.
Okay. And since y'all separated, have you paid Miss Anderson any monies at all?
No,
During the marriage, did you make her car payment?
I haven't made her car payment several times.
Okay, how many times?
I would say at least 2 to 3.
2 to 3
But
times.
also when I filed taxes, a lot of our tax money went to her. Actually, our last tax check we got went towards purchasing her a car. And then the other part of that actually went to putting a new motor in the car.
Okay, so did that money go into your account though?
It did.
Okay, and did she pay her own phone bill?
She did.
Did she pay her own car insurance?
Yes.
And did most of the time she pay Teresa Hill when y'all were both working and used her as daycare?
Yes, unless there was times that she needed help paying for it.
And you paid what? Do y'all rent or own the house?
We rent.
Okay, did you pay the rent?
I did.
And did you pay the
I
utilities?
paid all the utilities.
And then who bought the groceries?
I bought the groceries.
So would you agree that on most days, if y'all were both working, she would get up, get ready for work, get Rylan ready, take him and drop him off at Miss Hill's house?
Mhm.
And then you would usually get off earlier
Mhm.
and pick him up. Is that right?
Correct, yes.
And would you get home from work before Miss Anderson got home from work?
A lot of times I did. And then there was sometimes we got home around the same time.
And then, are you one of those people who cleans every day?
Not when I clean for a living, I don't come home and clean every day.
But would you consider yourself a clean person?
Pretty clean, yes.
Okay. And you would agree that that was a contention in the marriage about the share of chores, right?
Correct, yes.
Okay. And you would agree that you feel like you did more of the chores than your wife did?
I did, yes.
And you would agree that y'all argued a lot, right?
We did.
And you would agree that that's probably stressful for Ryland, isn't it?
I would say so.
And you felt like that even though the times got violent, it never got to the point where you called the police, did it?
No, there has been a couple of times where I almost did, and then I did not.
All right. And if you have recordings of these incidents that you've described, there are also recordings of the incidents that Ms. Anderson described, right?
What recordings?
Like you've got these cameras up and you've seen what these things that you've described for the court.
Yes.
Okay. What about the incident where she
Actually, about 4 months ago, when we went to General Sessions Court the first time, we had actually went up in front of the judge, and my attorney and the judge had worked out for Miss Anderson to go back to our house to get her personal belongings. She had till 3 o'clock that following day to get her personal belongings.
Right.
When I went back the next day after 3 o'clock, the DVR box to those cameras was taken out of the house.
So you're claiming none of these recordings exist?
I'm sure that they're on the DVR box if I had the DVR box.
But you don't have the DVR.
But I no longer have the DVR box in my possession. It was taken.
All right. So this one that these incidents that you described, they would be on the DVR box. And what about the Apple Watch?
If I had the DVR box.
Okay. So when did this alleged Apple Watch incident occur?
It was right around before Christmas.
Okay. And is that something that occurred while you were at work?
No, I was at home.
Earlier, Ms. Anderson described that you would take her to her appointments. Is that correct?
Yes, there was a lot of days that they would be scheduled in the afternoon when I would be home, so we would just go together.
Okay. So you would take her to her mental health appointments.
Yes, I actually sat into a couple of them myself.
And she described this, and her mother described that you would stay on her phone calls with her while she was traveling to and fro.
There would be times that we would be on the phone. Whenever they got to a store, wherever it would be, she would get off the phone, and then she would call me right back whenever they got in the car.
What was the purpose of that?
I don't know.
That took up a lot of your time, didn't it?
I would say it did, yes.
So what you're saying is she would call you on the way to the store and then call you on the way back home from the store, but that's not something you demanded of her.
No, it would just be something that we both mutually did. Even when she would be at a job and on her break, she would call me on every one of her breaks.
It's not something you demanded or requested of her.
No, I mean, I didn't mind it. You know, a lot of times if I was having a bad day at work, I mean, it helped. She called me and gave me someone to talk to.
We heard it perturbed her mother, didn't you?
I imagine it would if she's supposed to be spending the day with her mom and she's calling me a lot.
Well, her mother didn't make it sound like it was voluntary on Bethany's part. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, I would agree.
So are they both liars?
I don't know.
Yeah, just argumentative. Asking if they're both liars.
And you just stood up and said it's argumentative. Are you objecting?
Yes.
All right, so we have an objection, and the basis is the question, form of the question is argumentative.
Only question.
Paying the objection.
Did you also monitor the phone calls that Ms. Anderson had with her sister?
And I did not.
Did she wanted to go visit her sister and take Riley? Would you allow that?
She has a couple of sisters, so I'm not sure which one you're referring to.
Or either of them? Is that okay with you?
She's never really had a relationship with either one of her sisters. So I don't think so. No.
So you agree that you wouldn't want her taking Riley?
No, actually, she's taken Rylan to one of her sisters, her biological sister, a couple of different times. But we actually both agreed that it was in the interest of Rylan for him to not be around her, just due to her sister being arrested several times for drug possession and things like that. Her adopted sister, she had a job and she worked all the time too, just like I did. So it was just kind of whenever there was a chance. Most of the time, it was on the weekends when we was all not working. There was not very many chances in the week for visitations like that.
Okay. Well, did you or did you not have a problem with Miss Anderson taking Rylan and going alone, just with Rylan and she going and visiting her family?
No, she did it on many occasions.
But she would stay on the phone with you until she arrived and then call you on the way back.
Sometimes she would call me and let me know when she got there or somewhere around that. Yeah.
All right. Now, do you spank Rylan with a fly swatter?
I have disciplined him like that a few times because that's how I was disciplined when I was a child growing up.
And they described the incident where his toys were taken away. Would you agree that that occurred?
There would be times where, depending on what he did, I would take his toys. He still had his TV privileges. He was still allowed to go outside and things like that. But if he wasn't sharing daycare or something like that, or if he wouldn't pick his room up, I would take certain toys from him.
Right. During the time that Bethany worked at Speedway, did you have a problem with her working at that job?
I did not when she first started that job.
Okay. Did you begin to develop a problem?
I did.
And what was that problem?
I went up there a couple of times, to just speak with her on her lunch breaks. A lot of husbands, wives go visit each other on their breaks. So that's what I would go do. There was one evening where her boss actually came out and said, "You have to leave the property. You're not allowed to be here." I didn't understand what all that was about. I was confused. So later on that evening, I asked her, "Why did your boss just run me off like that?" And she said, "Oh, well, I went in there and I told them that you're a horrible person and you're all these things. And so they made you leave."
So did you ask her to quit?
I did ask her to quit.
And did she quit?
I think she worked there maybe a couple of more nights. I can't remember, but I know that she did quit.
So sometimes she worked jobs where she worked nights.
I think she had a couple of jobs where she worked nights.
Okay. And you always work days.
Yes.
So sometimes, would you agree, if she worked nights, you didn't have a problem with her sleeping, catch up on her sleep?
Actually, that's false. She had a job where she worked late and she didn't get off until, say, 11 o'clock and then come home really late. Our son, he wakes up early in the morning. So by the time she would come home, get in the bed, whatever, 5:30, 6 o'clock, it'd be time to have to get up and, because our son was up. After about 3 nights of that, I started noticing that she was just really droggy, barely able to walk. I actually went up there on her lunch break that evening to check on her, and she couldn't even barely walk across the parking lot because she was only getting 3-4 hours of sleep at night. So I told her, I said, you can't do that. You're going to have to get a day shift job because you're not going to be able to work nights and only getting a few hours of sleep.
Have you ever taken Rylan to work and left him in the car with a tablet to entertain him while you worked or cleaned?
I have not. I have taken him with me multiple times, and he's went in with me at my stops. There was actually one stop that I was at where, the lady actually fixed him brownies and, brought him a drink while I was there. No, there's also been times where her and Rylan
It
both.
works a lot better. I'm going to ask the questions. If you'll answer, your attorney, if he thinks explanations needed, he'll allow you to do that. Okay. Do you yourself have any diagnosis for mental illness?
I do not.
Have you ever taken anger management?
I have not.
Okay. Do you think you have an anger problem?
I do not.
The names that we've had witnesses testify that you call, do you think that's a healthy relationship?
I don't think it's healthy, no.
And you don't think it's healthy for Rylan nor healthy for anybody for name calling, right?
No, I don't think so, no.
And this recording we heard, that was recorded by you?
It was, yes.
And you did that right before we were scheduled to come to court last time.
I recorded every session, every time that I picked up, every time that I dropped off,
And the purpose of that,
for my protection.
what are you afraid of?
I've just always been told, record situations for your protection. That's the same reason why I was advised to take a witness with me every time I picked up and dropped off.
Did you tell Bethany you didn't want her doing laundry because she would burn down the house or tear up the washer and dryer?
I didn't tell her about the laundry, but I did tell her about the cooking because she can't cook. And every time she tried to cook, it usually turned into a disaster.
At night, when she would be kissing and loving on Rylan before bed, you would tell her to stop pestering him and just go on and put him to bed.
Sounds like facts, not in evidence. I don't recall that prior testimony.
It's
She just characterized-
cross-examination, it's open. It's cross-examination, it's open.
Judge, I
Whenever
think
you two finish talking, you can address me as to your response.
Judge, I think it's an
What is your
objection.
objection?
Facts, not in evidence. Her question assumes facts, not in evidence.
What is your response?
Well, I'll reform it if the court.
Overrule the objection is cross-examination. She's entitled to ask a question, and oftentimes during this hearing, both sides have made statements instead of asking it in the form of a question and then waited for the other side to respond. So I will overrule the objection, allow Ms. Morton to ask the question again, please.
The Bethany at night would be hugging and kissing on Rylan, and you would say, quit pestering him, go on and let him go to bed.
Not whenever we would first put him to bed, but there would be nights where he would be asleep and she would go in there sometimes and then she would end up waking him up.
What, loving on him?
No, not just loving on him. A lot of times it could have been, just trying to talk to him or whatever. And I would tell her, don't wake him up. He needs to sleep. He's got to get up early in the morning.
She complained that you wouldn't let her take him to the park alone. Is that true?
That's not true. She's taken him to the park and other places by herself.
Do you, do you ever call anyone and report her for not changing his diaper all day, as you stated in your direct?
I have not. No, I've always tried to talk to her about it. I knew that she had a mental disability. So I always tried to just give her the benefit of the doubt, and we were married. So, I just kept trying to talk to her about it and hope that eventually she would catch on and she would start doing what she was supposed to.
Did she breastfeed?
She did not.
Just 1 second. Mr. Anderson, you stated that you don't have a problem with Ms. Anderson having time with the child as long as she's basically supervised by her mother.
Yes, mainly just because I know that her mom done a lot of the work. She was right when she said that, Rylan would come to her a lot. Because a lot of times when Rylan was there, she was the one that did a lot of the stuff.
Right. But you also agreed that right up until the time that y'all separated, during the half the time, she was alone at home with Ryland during the day while you were at work.
She would be.
So it was okay before you filed for divorce for her to be alone?
No,
and
I was
supervised?
never okay with it. Again, that's why I put cameras in the house so I could keep a watch on my son to make sure that he was okay. Make sure that he was getting taken care of. And there was times where he wouldn't. Unfortunately, I don't have the DVR box in my possession anymore, or I could provide evidence to the court.
But even after you had that evidence, you didn't do anything, did you?
No, again, we were married. I wanted to try to work out our marriage issues, go to marriage counseling, get help. I constantly tried to talk to her. Her mom and dad would talk to her a lot of times, and it never got any better.
Did they also talk to you about name calling and not cussing?
They've talked to us about everything, all of it.
Thank you.
Just briefly. There's a proposed parenting plan. Mr. Anderson, you're asking the court to award you parenting time.
Yes,
And during that parenting time, you would decide who the caregiver would be when you're unavailable, correct?
correct.
That's all I have, Judge.
Anderson, you had testified that you knew that your wife had her disability or issues at the time you married her, right?
That's correct.
Did you ever expect you and she were going to have children?
I didn't. It actually came as a surprise to both of us, I
So
think.
you never thought when you got married that you and she might have children?
We had the child before we were married, so I never really even suspected.
So you had the child with her and then you got married, I'm sorry.
Yes.
All right. All right, step down. Almost 5 o'clock. I have an appointment outside of this office, outside of the court. So I'm going to have to stop court here and we can resume it on June 28th for the conclusion of this hearing. Call as many witnesses that afternoon. You'll have that day to, if you are available, you can have the balance of your hearing. Pending that final hearing in this case, court is going to order that the parties shall alternate weeks with this child. And the reason I'm doing that is this. Testimony from the witnesses has been that Mrs. Anderson has admitted by her own testimony that she's been violent towards Mr. Anderson, that she has broken things in the house. She has demonstrated that she has an aggressive behavior. She's also testified that Mr. Anderson was, during their relationship, the primary residential caregiver for this child. As he bathed the child, he provided food for the child, he did so. Her own mother testified that she wasn't a very good cook or a housekeeper, but that her strength as a parent was that she loved her daughter. Mr. Anderson appears to this court, at least, to be a pretty controlling individual. The camera situation bothers me a great deal. Having cameras, security cameras outside your home is a completely understandable thing. I've had them myself for good reason. Having them inside the house amounts to almost what we used to, what I've called as a nanny cam or something on that order, where you're basically spying on someone. And I understand you say you have consideration, but what I do know is that Mrs. Anderson loves her child, and she wants to be part of this child's life, and that apparently your relationship with each other is so toxic that it affected both of you in an adverse way, made you a very controlling individual, and it made her not be a particularly good parent at that point in time. This ruling I'm making today is not intended to be a final ruling. It's intended to give us an opportunity to see how the two of you do with caring for this child and sharing custody. You're both parents, both ought to have a relationship with this child. And in my opinion, based upon these facts, neither of you has proven to me that you are a superior parent to the other. For that reason, I think that Mrs. Anderson will have the benefit of having her mother to provide help with her and assistance with her. And during her week, she will be entitled to provide care for the child through her mother while she's at work. Hopefully she'll be able to provide care for the child when she's off work. Mr. Anderson will be able to choose who provides care while he's at work. Part of being a parent is that you have to work and that your child will have to suffer because you work, and being a daycare is not the end of the world for children these days. So under the circumstances, it's this court's opinion that pending the final hearing, the best thing I can do is to give you each equal time, and then we'll see how badly you two treat each other in the future. The exchange of the child will occur on Fridays and at 6 o'clock. The grandparents can provide however they wish for the transportation and the exchange of the child. Child support will be calculated on a temporary basis based upon his income and her income, and an equal division of time between them. Under the circumstances, everything else will be reserved. And I think unless Ms. Morton has a problem with the 28th, do you have a problem with that?
I have already have matters scheduled that day and I can't move them. I'll just be getting back from Scotland on the Sunday before. And
In Scotland? I'm supposed to feel sympathetic to you that you get to go to Scotland. I found out that I'm 48% Scottish or something like that, according to the latest Ancestry.com results. So I've always wanted to go to Scotland and Ireland and England. All right.
So I can do, I thought I heard you earlier say maybe the 29th was also available. That I'm completely open.
Well, I haven't set the.
Oh, I apologize.
We'll go ahead and make that a chancery day. 29th.
I hate to assume too much. I apologize.
Let me explain to both of you something. That is that what I've heard is that you both yell at each other. You've both been physical towards each other. You've both been, I mean, you know, each of you tells the same story about the other one. How do I know who's telling me the truth? The supposed video evidence of it has been destroyed, at least to that point. So it is my opinion that I think both of you are going to have to learn to co-parent this child if this child's going to have any chance whatsoever. And I'm not particularly optimistic that it's going to have much of a chance. I hope you two will in the next month or two show me wrong and show that there's been a great deal of cooperation, because when we come back on the 28th, I don't know why this can't be a final hearing in this case. This case has been pending since January. The time limits will be up. I don't know if you can get your discovery, if there's going to need to be any done between now and then, but June 28th, 9th is when we're setting it. And in my opinion, there needs to be a final resolution of all of this between these parties. But what I want you to understand is I'm going to look at how you two have conducted yourselves toward one another, how you treated each other. I understand tape recording the exchanges is fine. You have every right to do it under Tennessee law. But it sounded like to me that Mrs. Anderson's mother was more or less trying to reassure you, and everyone was trying to reassure each other that no matter what happened with the custody situation, that everybody would all still get along. And I hope that'll be the case. You don't need to be married. That's pretty clear to me at this point in time. And on the 28th, I will grant you a divorce. I don't know if I'll award it to one of you over the other, or if I'll just declare you to be divorced. That may be the simplest thing. I thought about doing that today, just to give you relief from being married to one another, because you clearly don't need to be married to each other. And hopefully by not being married to each other and being away from each other, you two will try to grow up a little bit and mature a little bit and put the best interest of your son first. Because unless you do that, unless you put aside this animosity and stop pointing the finger at each other and stop criticizing each other about everything they do, unless you stop that, you're going to essentially ruin every part of your child's life from here forward. And I say this to almost every custody case I have, but this one really deserves to have you sit there and listen to me. It is my opinion that if you two don't get along, you're going to have ruined this child's life from here on out. Every major event in the child's life will be ruined. Every event, birthday, graduation, Christmas, holiday seasons, all of that will be ruined because the two of you hate each other so much that you can't get along. So under the circumstances, my opinion is that you two had better start putting your child's best interest first. I'm giving you both equal time to demonstrate between now and June how you can parent this child and who will be the better parent. And I will consider at that time, at that final hearing, whether or not to make any changes in it or to designate one of you as the primary parent and the other the alternate parent, and how to handle it at that point in time. I know that there was a spousal support issue that was requested, and I'm not ruling on that until I hear the conclusion of this entire case. But clearly there may be a difference in their income that would justify some sort of payment of child support, at least from now until then. So based upon that, court makes that ruling. Mr. Odle, you are the moving party, so I'm going to order that you have to draw the order for this. And with that, I'm adjourning court. That is the judgment. Yes, Ms. Morton.
I apologize. Is the order of protection in effect with just the no contact between the parties?
The order of protection, if your client still wants the order of protection, it was against Mr. Anderson, is that correct? If you still feel like she needs that order of protection, then we'll leave it in place. It will not affect the child, but the exchanges of visitation for visitation will have to be, done in a way that's not involving the two of them. If, however it works out, most of the time, what I've heard today is that Mrs. Anderson is also guilty of aggressive, violent behavior toward Mr. Anderson. So, unless they start acting more maturely, they both may end up either in jail or they may end up having this child removed from both of their care and put into foster care. I hope that doesn't happen, but I want them to understand the significance. Grow up, you're 30 years old. You don't need to be engaging in any kind of threats of violence, and you chose her to marry her. So when the testimony is that you call her names or things, and I'm not asking you to agree or disagree, the testimony has been by her and her mother that you cursed her and criticized her and made statements that the child has even picked up. And that is unacceptable in this court's opinion. Treat her with respect. She's the mother of your child. Whether you like her or dislike her, treat her with respect. And she needs to treat you with respect. And if you do that, then your child is going to see that you two respect each other, and you will be teaching a lesson to this child. If you don't do that, you're teaching a lesson to your child that it's okay to disrespect each other, disrespect your mother, disrespect your father. And in my opinion, and I realize I'm old school, kind of like Ms. Anderson's mother, respecting your parents, respecting your mother and your father is a very, very essential thing. Sometimes parents don't deserve to be respected. What I'm waiting to see in June is whether the two of you deserve to be respected as parents and deserve this court's respect, much less your son's respect. So I'm fussed at you all, I'm going to fuss at you. I want you to be good parents. I want you to both be involved in your child's life, but it's up to you from here on out how this goes. That's the judgment of the court. We now stand adjourned.
All rise. Court's adjourned.